about. First of all, we should probably introduce ourselves. Fraser, you want to start with yourself?
I am Fraser. I help out in multiple places at the university. So with UBC, absolutely is helping early stage companies, early stage ventures, early stage ideas, early stage entrepreneurs, just taking their idea and working with it and starting to learn what execution looks like. And then I also teach with Blair. We teach NVD, which you can see in the background of his room there. So a class that I teach on campus as well. I also teach the MMs, Masters of Management Topics in Entrepreneurship.
We have a ton of fun. Francis.
Hi, I'm Francis Steiner. I'm one of the EIRs, part of Entrepreneur UBC and Hatch. Basically, I try not to teach because I don't have the skills that Blair and Fraser have. I'm your classic chip shot artist. I'm the guy on the sidelines trying to add a bit of color and difference. I've done 4 startups, probably made every single mistake you could probably make as a startup. Luckily, my last startup had an exit. I just got my last check 10 days ago, so I'm still very happy about that. Not enough money to retire on, unfortunately, but still nice to get a check. And I run a few workshops in phase 3, and I try to help well on some of the phase 3 workshops. Probably my specialty is a bit around finance and a lot around business development. And I love working with the teams. I work across all phases, but primarily the later phases. Over to you.
Fair enough. So let me put all of that in context. You've got a significant amount of horsepower in both Fraser and Francis, and there's an awful lot of other people, entrepreneurial folks on campus that are here to help folks just like you that have entrepreneurial ideas or you're trying to get started. So myself, Blair Simonite, I came out here, I got convinced about 7 years ago. I'm a tech guy. I came from software. I came from clean tech. I came from energy, a bunch of other things. I have helped to build businesses. I invest in businesses. I sit on a lot of boards of directors. But the most fun that I had was putting this god-awful thing together. This is the entrepreneurship at UBC. Looks like a rocket ship that's fallen over. That's not what it's intended to show. What it's really about is we call it the funnel. And it's because an awful lot of entrepreneurial ideas get started on the left-hand side. And some of the stuff like we're doing right here, Innovation on Board, fantastic opportunity for entrepreneurial thinkers to come up with ideas and try them out. And then you'll go through maybe Innovation on Board and you might decide to actually enter the E at UBC funnel. And that's when you would first meet Fraser. And Fraser shepherds ventures and entrepreneurs through the first couple of phases of what UBC does. And the idea is you learn a ton, but it's real life stuff. It is not about getting a grade. It's about actually trying to create real ventures. And you're surrounded there by Francis, Fraser, myself, and a couple hundred mentors, and somewhere around, I think we've got about 18 entrepreneurs in residence. Anyway, there's a lot of resources there for you. And as this thing goes across to the right-hand side, as you make more and more progress over time, not everyone does, that's why the funnel shrinks over time. Eventually you might end up here at the Hatch Accelerator. Francis didn't say enough about this. Francis was instrumental in getting the Hatch Accelerator constructed and operating the way it works today. So serious ventures, meaning people who have incorporated a company full-time on their ventures at that point in time, trying to build a real business, trying to raise money, finding real customers, will end up working with us and our team in the Hatch Accelerator. So those are all the things that are available to you folks. But I do also want to point out, especially you guys as students, the new venture design course that Fraser and I teach. It is the best, it is the most fun that I have, bar none, on campus. And it's because every year I get to meet anywhere between 75 and 85 people exactly like you, 4th year engineering, business, any entrepreneurial student. You come together in teams, and your job over a year is to try to build a real venture with our guidance. There are no lectures. It is all about going out and talking to real customers and trying out real stuff. And New Venture Design is a place where we do the exact same stuff as we do at UBC, but you get a mark. And it's a safe, super safe environment to try to learn about building a business. Because I'll tell you what, once you get out into the real world and you're using your time and your money, it's less safe. So it's an awful lot of fun to do this stuff in new venture design. Not that we get excited about this. Okay, we get quite excited about this. Fraser, Francis, and I, always happy to talk to anyone about more of this stuff, but we're going to hand it over to Fraser in a second. There is, so there's the three of us if you want to get in touch with us, and there's also the Entrepreneurship at UBC website. And if you guys want, we don't have to kill anyone if we give you these slides, so we're happy to pass them along. And Fraser, shall I hand over to you? Now, do you want to just take over screen sharing, or do you want me to advance?
You can advance the slides, Blair. That's great. So we're gonna jump into this activity that I really, really appreciate. This has to do around ideation. And the reason why I think this is so valuable, and we're gonna talk to some of the key points afterwards, is in my opinion, we need to do a better job as entrepreneurs around ideation. And so this is an activity that's gonna take us through that, about coming up with ideas, but then the huge part is the debrief afterwards, where we're going to talk to everybody and see what they think about their idea. And so if we're going to do it as one big room, I'm going to encourage you then, as I'm talking through the next activity, I'm going to encourage you to think about what your idea would be, and we can talk about it in groups, okay? So next slide. The main reason I bring up push versus pull is I believe that most ideas fall within those two categories. You're either pushing technology onto the market, or the market is pulling a solution into the market. And so what does that mean? Well, if it's a push, this is what the university does such a good job at. This is why we're all here. We're learning to build things. And the university is constantly building things, whether it's building new intellectual property, whether it's teaching you how to build a better paper, whether it's teaching you how to build new theories, whether it's actually building physical goods, building new business models, building new medicines, you name it, right? The university is a hotbed of producing, and I've used the word technological innovation, but just producing innovation, right? And so we need to take that innovation from the university, and we need to try to find a home for it. Right. So for those of you who don't know, there's about $650 million in annual research that gets pumped into UBC. And the government and certain people are starting to ask, well, what's the economic value of all of that research? Right. And so it's our job as E at UBC to help and say, well, you know what, there's lots of great inventions. There's lots happening. Let's find customers. Let's find market opportunities for these inventions. So keep in mind, push versus pull. So push, we're pushing the technology. We've created it, right? Maybe there's been $1 million that has gone into that research fund to create that technology. Well, we're not changing the scope of that research. That's already been done. That's the push. And then which is different from the pull. And that's where the market's saying, we've got this problem. We need a solution for this. And the market doesn't really care what the solution looks like. It could be a mix of 10 different potential solutions, but the market's going to want the best one. So I'm going to take us through this activity of the push. And next slide. Thank you, Blair. Here is the activity I want you to use. And it's easier if we think about this particular example of a push rather than what you've been working on in your own. And so I'm going to leave this slide up probably for the next 10 minutes here. We're going to talk through it. But this is an invention that a PhD student made here at UBC. What it is, and all it is a computer algorithm that takes in a photo and creates a palette. So the input here was the photo you're looking at, the sky and the bit of the rainbow. And the output is those 6 colors that make up the palette. Now, what's so special about this? You're saying, what's the importance of this? The importance is this perfectly aligns with color theory. So if anybody knows the color wheel, we've got opposing complementary colors. This lines up with it. It takes all the guesswork out of it. And we've got a beautiful palette that isn't just based on regression, looking at the maximum number of colors and then outputting, but it's really taken into account color theory. So here's a technology, as Blair says, it's a real technology, and it exists only at the software level. So consider this, those of you programmers, just consider this to be a command line interface, right? Where you're going to type in something.exe, input is my image, and then you're going to hit return, and the output is just going to be your hex codes for your color palette. And that algorithm is what the juice, or is what the real meat of this invention is. So the activity that I want to give to us here, and if we're not going to go into breakout rooms, we're going to talk through this. I want to hear where we think this technology should go. So where I want to go with this is I want a couple key takeaways here. One is it's difficult, right? And the team that approached us, and Blair has the slide up, that a team that approached us, what they wanted to do was create an app that was going to help suggest what furniture to buy based upon the color that you gave it. Now, they ended up moving away from furniture and moving more into clothing is what they wanted to do. Their idea was very complex. They wanted to index all of the online shopping out there. I mean, that's got to be, I don't even know how many, that's probably 300, 500 million pieces of clothing that's out there that needs to be indexed. It needs to also make the assumption that the color that the photo was taken for that clothing is the actual correct color, that there wasn't a filter put over top of it. You would upload the photo of what you liked, and it would say, okay, here's all the different clothing options to buy. Very complex idea in the sense that I think taking that idea to market requires a lot of time, a lot of training of the algorithm, an interesting interface for an app to do. And I think that this team, they've probably been at it for probably 2 years now in the development cycle of trying to get this done. But that was their vision, right? That was what they wanted to do. Is it the right one? Is that what the technology should have been done? You know, I don't necessarily know. But what I do know is that there would have been faster ideas to test the market with, right? We could have just spun up a simple website and said, here, you know, just play around with it. And let's send visitors to the website. And if we get 1,000 active users per month, or we get 10,000, or we get 1 million active users, that starts to tell me something of what a low fidelity or an MVP, how we can test that out to see if we can gain traction before we go on this 2-year mission of trying to prove out our idea or not. I also want you to notice we heard a lot of good ideas. I mean, on paper, they're good ideas. In reality, though, we need to dig second level. We need to start thinking, how do I charge money for this? What is the market size? How many potential users? How much are they going to pay me? What does my development cycle look like? How much money will it cost me to make that? How much margin do I have, meaning profit, so I can pay myself back for all that development time? Right? We got to start thinking of this second level when it comes to entrepreneurship. Being an inventor is one thing, but being an entrepreneur means we got to involve the commercialization aspect, and we have to think about money, right? So that's what we do at UBC. We say, okay, great inventions, love the inventor, but now how do we train them as an entrepreneur? How do we get them to start thinking about the market, start thinking about revenues, start thinking about how to make money? A couple last key takeaways. The amount of time that we spent coming up with our idea, that's very typical of an entrepreneur spending 5 minutes coming up with, this is what I want to do. We'll spend 2 years helping that entrepreneur trying to turn it into reality. But as far as about the amount of time that went into the brainstorming activity around the idea, around different markets, different applications, different technological uses, probably, in my opinion, about 5 minutes. It was in the shower. It was on a bus ride. And if you listen to what we just did, we brought 12 people together to brainstorm. You should also be doing that. There's scientific research that has been done that talks about ideation theory. The more people you talk to about your idea, the more you take someone else's better idea, make a combination of it. And so what we've just done is, if we were to have a second session on this, we would identify our MVP, how to get a product to market as cheap, as fast as possible, how to test the commercialization of it, and pivot and modify as we go. So there is scientific evidence that shows that an innovation process that follows that type of ideation, talking to as many people as you can, rather than just hunkering down on your laptop and making your app, you're going to be better off spending more time in ideation to get the right idea before you go to market. And so my takeaway here is, Blair, Francis, and I, we love doing this. That's why we're involved in it. We help people to come up with their ideas and to try to create them, get them better. A lot of business students, you'll find yourself in internships or working at companies where they're saying, we've got a product, go find markets. And you'll be doing the exact same activities that we went through. But now you have to start thinking more dollars and cents, market size, profits, and revenues. And so that's kind of my takeaways from this. I'm just going to post into the chat. When I first started doing this activity, this website, if you click on it and go to it, that existed. And I knew that there was lots of visitors going to it. But recently, in the last couple of months, they've added on the toolbar along the top, extract gradient and extract theme, which is exactly what we're doing here. Right. And so what does that tell me? It tells me there's market demand. There absolutely is. And this is amongst graphic designers, the Adobe, the Photoshop, the Canva types. Right. And so I would be using this sort of evidence to look and see where is this maybe already being adopted. Right. And so just in a couple minutes of starting to Google, you're going to uncover a lot of stuff and then get more proof about who might already be using something similar, because that's lower hanging fruit than trying to convince some other market that they need to start using this. So that's it. Blair, go ahead.
Can I just riff on that for 30 seconds? I couldn't agree more with what Fraser was saying. Just a kind of a thought for you to keep in mind as you're doing your own ideation. You can have one technology idea and look at all the different potential problems it might solve over and over. But listen to the breadth that we heard all the way from, you can help pick furniture and clothing, to McGuire, how did you put it? You may have medical imagery where the color distinctions between this is cancer that's going to kill somebody in 30 days and this is actually just a freckle, and the human eye can't tell the difference. Talk about a high consequence thing, way more high consequence than I picked a shitty pair of pants to wear with this shirt today. So all of those are potential markets, but it's so interesting to talk to different people to see what it is your idea might be able to solve in the world. And if you want to solve something really important, which one would you prefer to solve? Everyone needs pants. Solving cancer is kind of cool.
Very good. And then just to the follow-up point, again, I enjoy reading a lot of research papers on ideation. 90% of your time early on should be out talking to people, talking to those medical imaging experts in cancer detection, talking to color palette specialists, artists, talking to Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, right? And so 90% of your time early on should be bouncing ideas off, ideating, and only 10% of your time actually working on it. Okay. So that's my key takeaway. Thanks, Blair, for following up. Francis, any last comments? Oh, you're on mute.
Completely agree. When you're thinking about, one thing I always tell people about is think about the pain you're trying to solve. People, you can relieve the pain, you will get people to buy. So when you're digging through this, this gradient thing that we just talked about in terms of the cancer, it's not just a metaphysical pain, it's a real pain. So you get that. So the more you can get to that, the more likely you'll get to it. So always think in that way. Is it a nice to have or essential? And that's all I'll say.
Yeah. Awesome.